Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you guys all guessed C because that is the correct answer. All right, so we learned that we associate Christmas with red and green because of this plant that's made into wreaths. Now here the article is going to give us some more information. It says, no one is certain why red and green are traditionally Christmas colors. Now in this sentence we use the adverb traditionally. We added ly to the adjective traditional. When we use it as an adverb, we say that something is used or seen in a traditional way. So when we often decorate our houses or wear red and green clothes at Christmas, we're doing this because it's tradition. Yep. So we're doing this traditionally.
Yep.
Okay, now it's something we've done for a long time, and the same can be said about red and gold for Chinese New Year. They are traditionally used or seen at Chinese New Year because we always see them during that time.
Yep.
Here's another example sentence. In some cultures, people traditionally wear black when someone close to them dies.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, the article goes on to say, however, one theory is that the connection has to do with holly.
Okay.
Let's take a look at that word connection. It's a noun, and it means something that brings two things together. Connection comes from the word connect, meaning to put together. So a connection is something that does that. We use the word about things we can touch, like how my shoulder is the connection between my arm and the rest of my body.
Oh, okay.
And also about ideas or about electronic things, like a Wi-Fi connection between my phone and the machine that makes Wi-Fi happen. Now we're talking about the connection between the colors red and green and Christmas.
So we think about them put together. I get it.
And another example of how we can use this word is, I thought for a while about how one thing could cause another before I saw the connection.
So you had to think about how they went together.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're learning about holly. Now holly is that plant we talked about when we make wreaths. And like we said, it has green leaves with red berries. Now here, the article is going to say more about this plant. It says, this plant has long been made into wreaths during the winter season. So they've been using this plant to make wreaths for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
How long, in fact?
It actually goes back, the article says, to ancient Rome. In ancient Rome, these wreaths were commonly given as gifts during the Roman festival Saturnalia.
Ooh, I'm sure we'll hear more about Saturnalia in a second.
Yep. Let's take a quick look at just the word ancient. It's an adjective, and it means very, very old. We often use this word to talk about the very, very old civilizations that existed thousands of years ago, like Greece, Rome, Egypt, and early China. An example of how we might use this word is, the teacher warned her students that there would be a test on ancient Africa at the end of the week.
Okay, so we learned about this ancient festival called Saturnalia. Now, happened in Rome. It was a Roman festival. That's a long time ago, way back in Europe and Italy. The center of power was in Rome. Okay, so let's learn about Saturnalia. The article says, Saturnalia honored Saturn, the Roman god of agriculture, and was celebrated from December 17 to 25th. Okay, now...
Sounds like Christmas.
Yeah, it's around the same time as Christmas, and we're going to learn more about that in a second. But first, let's find out about agriculture. We learned that Saturn was the god of agriculture. Now, agriculture is a noun, and it is the name for the practice of farming. Now, there are many different kinds of farming, but they all belong to the same group, which is called agriculture. Here's an example. Benson's family works in agriculture. They grow corn on their land. So that's just one thing that's involved in agriculture.
The article explains that in the 4th century, Catholic Church leaders wanted to counter the festival with one they thought was for the right God. And that word Catholic needs some more explaining. It's an adjective, and it originally meant something like including everything. But now it just means the really big international Christian organization that accounts for most of the world's Christians. The person in charge of the Catholic Church is the Pope.
Oh.
You might have seen a picture of him with a big hat.
The long white robe.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So these leaders of the Catholic Church wanted to counter the Roman festival of Saturnalia. Now here we used counter. Now this word sometimes is a noun, but in this sentence it's actually being used as a verb. When you counter something, you try to prove that something another person says is not true. Or you do something to make another person's thing seem less important, true, or right. So what was happening was that these Catholic leaders were trying to make the Roman god Saturn seem less important because they didn't think he was the right god.
That's right.
So here we see two religions kind of saying, oh, they're not right. My God's right, not your God. So that's kind of what's happening here.
And what did they do? Well, the article tells us. Thus, they started celebrating Jesus' birth on December 25.
Okay, so here's what's happening. The Romans used to give people red and green holly wreaths at Saturnalia, right? Okay, but the Catholics didn't like this. So what they did was they started celebrating Jesus' birth at the same time the Romans were celebrating Saturnalia.
That's right.
Okay, so they're having their own celebration on December 5th, which is, you know, when we celebrate Christmas.
Right.
Okay, so let's see what's going to happen next. Okay, so we learned that the Catholics started to celebrate their holiday of Jesus' birth on December 25th. Here in the article, it says, yet while Romans were encouraged to celebrate a different holiday, they kept many Saturnalia traditions, such as hanging holly wreaths. So even though they were celebrating a different holiday, some of the traditions, like these wreaths, stayed the same. Okay, so what happened?
Well, soon, red and green came to represent Christmas rather than the original Roman festival.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And rather than is a phrase that means the same thing as instead of. One thing rather than another thing.
Okay.
An example of how we might use this is Sarah likes to drink tea rather than coffee in the morning.
Ah, so I see we could also replace rather than with instead of there.
Right.
So rather than drinking tea, Sarah drinks, or rather than drinking coffee, Sarah drinks tea. So instead of coffee, she drinks tea. Okay, so red and green is now used to celebrate Christmas instead of the original festival Saturnalia. Now, original is an adjective here, and it's used to describe something that existed first or existed at the beginning. For example, we could say, our original vacation plan was to go to Kending, but we changed our minds. Now we plan to go to Penghu. So in the first, you were going to go to Kending.
Right.
But that changed. Just like the Roman festival Saturnalia was the original festival in December, but now we usually celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
I wonder if I know anyone who celebrates Saturnalia. Do you?
I don't think I know anyone who celebrates Saturnalia.
I might start celebrating Saturnalia. Why not?
Yeah.
Might have a festival for farming. That sounds like a fun time. I don't know about December, though, because there's not a lot of farming going on in December because it's Christmas. It's winter.
Right.
It's not Christmas. It's winter. Okay, well, that's all the time we've got to talk about our fun fact article today, but don't worry, we're going to be right back with today's For You chat.